There are a number of techniques that we can use for critical thinking, and what I want to do is quickly just run through some ideas about critical thinking. The first point is for the critical thinker to clarify, or in other words, to elaborate understanding. It's not just about simple recognition of facts, but actually beginning to address what they really mean. For example, an unclear clarification would be, how can we fix education? Very broad. More clarity would be, how can teachers better prepare students for the future? Much more clear and precise. It's important for the critical thinker to be accurate. For example, an inaccurate statement, most students don't know how to learn, whereas an accurate statement would be, most students in Pakistan need to develop thinking skills. Much more clarity, much more accuracy about the statement. The critical thinker also needs to be very precise in the techniques they're using for critical thinking. For example, that would be about not being ambiguous and avoiding generalizations. For example, imprecise statement might be, Maliha is a problem student. A more precise statement would be, Maliha has an attention deficit problem. The critical thinker needs to be relevant in their thinking, stick to the main point, pay attention to the facts, the details in question. For example, an example of irrelevance, why do I like teaching maths? Well, I was good at maths, that's why. Whereas much more relevant would be to say that I like teaching maths because it's an important skill for students to learn. It's important for the critical thinker to know the purpose of what they're thinking about. What does it accomplish? What's the most important thing to focus on? And also to identify assumptions in relation to those purposes. All thinking is based on assumptions, after all. An assumption could be that girls are no good at science. That is an assumption that some people may have. But a correct assumption, a better assumption, would be science is only a subject like any other. If all female students are not succeeding, therefore, perhaps it's not the fact that they're not good at science, but maybe it's something to do with the teacher or the way the subject is being taught. It's important for the critical thinker to check their emotions. It's very easy for emotions to confuse the process of critical thinking. And it's also important for the critical thinker to empathize with others who are maybe looking at the same situation. Try to see it from other people's perspectives, because that can give a lot of clarity. This includes things like logic as well as emotion, and also an understanding of how experience feeds into our understanding. It's important for the critical thinker to know what they don't know, to know their own ignorance. I put a statistic on there, almost 1/10,000th of a percent of all knowledge in the world is what each individual might know. So by knowing your own ignorance, by knowing that you don't know everything, means that you're open to more information from outside. You still might get the information wrong, but at least you have an opportunity to educate yourself about what you don't know and to begin to grow and develop. It's important for the critical thinker to be independent in their thinking, because it can be very easy to let people influence your thinking too much. Try to be strong, believe in your own skills as a reflective practitioner. Although it's good not to break the boundaries, it's also good to also test the boundaries, to understand your particular priorities and values and see where they fit into the system. It's important for the critical thinker to think through the implications of what they're doing in the classroom, because all thinking leads to action, and therefore action can have a consequence. Not thinking through, for example, could lead to not planning lessons in a particularly good fashion. If the lessons are unplanned, then there are implications to that. The implication is that the lesson won't go very well, and perhaps the students won't learn in that lesson, and therefore not achieve the outcomes in the curriculum. Another thing for the critical thinker to consider is the particular biases that they have about education and about teaching and learning. For example, an example of bias might be that you believe that students should play sport, whereas it would be much better from an unbiased point of view to consider how sports activities may in fact have some influence over academic achievement. Another aspect for the critical thinker to consider is not to make judgments about what they're experiencing in the classroom, but to think critically around what is actually happening. An immediate judgment might be that the school needs to improve its curriculum, but by suspending judgment, you can consider how critical thinking can be used to enhance and improve the curriculum. Another consideration is always, of course, to consider other people's points of view. Listening to other viewpoints helps us see reality much more than if we're looking at things in isolation. By being narrow-minded, for example, we don't look beyond what we're doing in the classroom. Being much more open-minded, maybe reading research around teaching and learning, can help us improve what we're doing. Another consideration are cultural assumptions around learning and teaching, and maybe there could be an impact in relation to teaching that you're doing. So consider the different perspectives. How might culture impact on what you're doing, how the students are learning, and how are you thinking about that? And it's important to be fair and also not selfish in your critical thinking. Each person has bias, and what we need to do is actually consider things from a very open-minded, unbiased point of view. For example, I can't know everything, it's not my fault I made a mistake, would be an example of selfishness. A fair point of view would be, I can't know everything, but I can easily, through some self-study, start to improve things.